Hey folks, welcome back to another edition of My Car Guru. Speaking of welcome back, I had some blue jeans welcome me back, day before yesterday. They said, "Where you been?" Well, basically I was at a 38-inch waistline, 232 pounds, way too much, really. I mean, I am 6'3", but I'm old, and I got probably more fat than muscle now, and I shouldn't weigh that much. So I'm trying to get back down to 210. Well, I reached 218, and I grabbed a pair of my lucky jeans that I hadn't worn in a long time and put them on, and they welcomed me back, size 36. You know, this happens pretty fast. My wife gets kind of jealous of me a little bit because if I put my mind to losing weight, I go on the Atkins diet or a version thereof, and just cut out the carbs, and it just melts off. But I don't eat unhealthy. I eat the Atkins bars in the morning, and then I have a good lunch of meat and broccoli or something green. Eat a lot of greens at the Mennonite store. I go to this Mennonite store here in Greenville. It is good old country cooking, and they have the best smoked chicken breast. I just wonder how they found chickens that are that big. I'm telling you, one half of a chicken breast is all that I can eat. It's huge. And then I get collard greens and bottled water. And that fills me up. And there is nothing unhealthy about that. And then dinner time, I do about the same thing. My wife said, "When can you start eating potatoes again and stuff?" And I said, "Well, as soon as I get down to where I want to be." So, it is a discipline thing. It's a habit change. And we'll talk a little bit about habits today. Resolutions for the average car owner. Fixing car owner habits is kind of what I'm about, because a lot of the habits that people have cost them a lot more money than they should. I do like listening or watching Dave Ramsey and some of his stuff. He's that financial consultant. He's a financial guru, gazillionaire, lives in Nashville, talks common sense. And he has some very strongly held positions as far as car buying and leasing and the behaviors that people exhibit when they do either one of those two things. And he cautions people, and I mean, he'll outright say, "Don't buy a new car." He said it's a waste of money, especially if you have to finance it. But then again, he'll say, if you have to buy a new car, make sure you pay at least 20% down. Try to get a great financing deal. If you got bad credit, don't be buying a new car. Buy something that you can afford and, that you can make the monthly payments on and build your credit up so that you can go out and buy what you want to when you need to. But he is an anti-credit guy. And so am I, really, to a large extent. I'm one of those guys. I tell my kids, and I'll tell my grandkids, don't go out and buy a toy like a motorcycle or a side-by-side or a four-wheeler or jet skis. Don't go out and buy those things unless you can pay cash for them. You don't finance toys. So that's just been one of my philosophies for many years. And speaking of philosophies, I'm a resolution setter. I do it. It works for me. And I keep most of them. I'd say I'm batting 700. Which is a pretty good batting average. And the others will slide. So I'm not 100% disciplined like my wife is. She is the most disciplined person I have ever known. And she keeps me in line as best she can. But I do believe in setting resolutions at the beginning of the year. And I got a jump start on my weight resolution because, it's really, I think I mentioned this on the show, it's just really a bad time to go on a diet is right before Thanksgiving. It makes no sense, but at least there's a lot of meat and some vegetables that I can eat during Thanksgiving. But I've maintained it. I've been very disciplined. It's worked. And these resolutions for car owners, buying right, maintaining right, fixing right, and driving right. Those four things will really transform your car life. And your car life is probably the second most expensive thing that you do in terms of buying and maintaining the automobile. But it's important. Why do people buy new cars? Dave Ramsey is anti-new cars. I mean, I think they buy new cars. A lot of people buy new cars for the wrong reason. They say, well, I deserve it. Well, do you? I mean, who said you didn't? And why do you deserve it? Is it because you work hard? I mean, you can work hard and not buy a new car, but everybody wants something new, right? I mean, not everybody, but most people do. I see it every day. I mean, we sold 40 cars last week with a holiday in the middle of it, and it was all this year-end purchasing stuff. It's people just saying, they like to buy cars at the year end because they think the deals are better. And in many cases they are. There are huge incentives from the manufacturers. But is it a spur of the moment thing? Or is it something you've been thinking about for 6 months? Is it a plan? Please have a plan. Look at your current automobile. Look at the year and the mileage. And think about reality for just a second. I mean, I'm a new car dealer. I have a Ford dealership, a Nissan dealership. I have a used car dealership. I have a tractor store. I've got a lot of stuff going on that depends on people wanting to buy new cars. And most of them, are making justifiable purchases. Many are not. They just aren't. They owe too much on their existing trade-in. They're way upside down. It's really not time to trade, but they're determined. They have their reasons, right? Now, I had an older couple in here the other day. They were in the customer lounge on the Nissan side in our Nissan showroom. And they had purchased a 2025 Nissan Kicks. And they were in my service department, and they just got it a week before. And I recognized them. I said, hey, folks, can I help you with something? What are you doing back here already? And I knew they were back in the service area. I said, well, we had a light come on. I said, on your new Kicks? And they said, yes, on our new Kicks. Check engine light came on. So, I mean, this can happen. So I dug into it a little bit. I went back into the shop, talked to the technician. He said, yeah, there's this part that has a gasket on it, and the gasket failed. And it's part of the evaporation system, emission controls. It triggered the check engine light. So I went back and explained to them, make sure they understood what was going on. And I said, well, tell me about your trade. I wasn't involved in it. He said, yeah, we had a car for 13 years, and it had gotten a little long in the tooth and had close to 200,000 miles on it. And we were just worried about whether it was going to last any longer, so we traded it. Got us a new Kicks. We love Nissan. This is our third Nissan. Now, let me ask you something. Is that a logical reason to trade? I think so. 13 years is a long time to keep a vehicle. And right at 200,000 miles, that's pushing it. And a lot of people do that because they don't have an alternative. But it's the folks who bought one last year, don't like it, and they financed it for 84 months with nothing down, and they're coming into trade to get something else. Those are the folks that I want to try to change their habits. Make a New Year's resolution. If you're way upside down, if you're in bad shape as far as trading, then don't trade. Suffer through it. Just hold on. Time will go by faster than what it does for me. It goes by too fast, and you'll look up, and you will have made a whole bunch of payments on that car, and all of a sudden you're at about a break-even situation. Maybe you've even been able to save up a little money for a down payment. Now that's when you go out and buy a car. That's when you go and you've got leverage, with the dealership. When you're upside down, really upside down, you're just about begging them to trade with you. And they have to jump through all kinds of hoops to make that happen. Now, can they make a lot of money doing it? Yeah. They can, and you're the one that suffers. When the dealership makes a whole bunch of money on a particular transaction, you're making monthly payments on that profit. That's just a fact. And would you rather make payments on the principal or the profit? Now, when I say principal, it's all principal. It's dollars that you financed. And I just said principal and profit because they both started with P, and I thought it sounded good. But it's really not reality. But when you are making monthly payments, if you got a bad deal, you're making payments on what the salesperson and the dealership were able to stick in their pockets. And I don't want to do that. Yeah, I want them to make a little bit of profit. But what's reasonable? What's reasonable on a new car these days, right now, the way the market is? If you can't buy a car, just a typical, let's say you're looking at a Kia Soul or, a Toyota Camry or maybe even a Honda Accord. If you're paying more than, $500 to $1,000, well, forget about the Kia. I'm talking about for the Honda Accord or the Camry. If you're paying more than $500 to $1,000 over the factory invoice price, which is easily obtainable online, you can find out what that number is, then you're paying too much. If you negotiate hard enough, if you hold the line and you negotiate on the selling price of the car, if you hit the 4 targets independent of one another like I talk about, let me review those real quick. Get a good selling price on the car first before you talk trade, then get a trade value, then find out what the financing terms are, and then talk about aftermarkets like warranties and gap insurance and stuff like that. Those 4 things are what you need to be focused on when you go in to buy a car, not how fun it's going to be to take that particular vehicle on vacation this summer. It will be fun, but you don't want to be paying for profit. You want to pay for value. And the way you get value is to negotiate those 4 things separately. That's how you get value. And remember, what the salesperson wants you to do is forget about those 4 things and just talk about monthly payment. They want to get a credit app. They want to find out what kind of credit you have. And then they're going to work backwards into the deal to maximize profit. You're going to resist that. You're going to resist that by not talking payment, by talking about the 4 targets, and that's the key. And, if you want to use my name you probably don't need to, because most people that are listening to this podcast, they don't know me from Adam, nor do the people that you're dealing with know me from Adam. But if you just keep the 4 targets in your head and negotiate them separately and in that order, most of the time you'll get a good deal. You may not get a great deal, because that is so dependent upon where you live. I mean, a great deal, like for example, if you live in Southern California, then EVs are going to bring a premium. If you live in Tennessee, where I live, you can steal an EV. They will lose money to get rid of an EV. But people don't want to drive all the way from California to Tennessee to buy their EV because they know they'll have to stop 15 gazillion times to get back to California so they can charge. Okay, I'm going to take my first break and I'm going to come back and talk to you a little bit about depreciation and how to slow it down. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I am back. The thing that kills most people, other than not paying a high interest rate and not paying anything down, is depreciation. Is what that new car or even that used car that you pay too much for, how quickly it depreciates. Now, I'm going to acknowledge, and you need to acknowledge, that a car is a depreciating asset. And if you can reduce the dollars input or the purchase price of the car and then slow down the depreciation, then you're going to be better off at trade time. You're maintaining your asset. It's no different than what you do with your house. I mean, do you buy a house, live in it for 30 years and never do a thing to it? Of course not. You've got to pressure wash the siding. You've got to put a new roof on it. You got to maintain. You got to update the thing. If you leave the landscaping out there for 20 years, it's going to overgrow your windows. And people see that and say, man, I got to cut back that landscaping. There's no way that I would buy that house the way it looks right now. You want to maintain that asset. Do the same thing with your car, please. Now, the perspective that individuals like yourself have towards your car is totally different from the dealership. The dealership looks at all those cars out there on the lot, kind of like we look at a fruit stand, okay? So when the car comes in, it's like fresh peaches. You ever go to South Carolina and you see all the peach stands all over the place? We always have to stop and get peaches. Well, we know that we don't stop on the way to the beach. We stop on the way back from the beach. Because if we stop on the way to the beach, a week later, those peaches won't be any good. And so on the way back, we'll stop. Now, that that peach is going to deteriorate over a period of time. If I have a used car out here on my lot, when I buy it, let's say I put $25,000 in it, the way the book values go in depreciation, it's very possible that 90 days from now, it's lost $3,000 or $4,000 in value. They go down. Plus, there's something we call lot rot. And that's when the vehicle just sits out there. Weeds grow up around the tires, and the windows get all fogged over, and it gets those black streaks from the environment all over it. Your car may have some of those if you haven't washed it in 90 days. But yeah, it starts looking bad. Salespeople start avoiding it. And then, you try to take it to the auction, which you can't do with peaches, but you take it to the auction and you lose $5,000 or $6,000 on it because you kept it too long. That's why we look at the cars out here like a fruit stand. Well, you don't look at them that way. You look at it as an asset, or you should. A lot of people just look at it as a way to get from point A to point B. Other people look at it as a status symbol. Everybody has different motives. But there's one thing that they have in common. What they own is going to go down in value. Unless it's some rare car. Like right now, for example, a 2018 Mustang Shelby GT 350R is worth about $20,000 more than it's sold for new. Not many cars do that. And the people who buy those kind of things, they know what they're going to do as far as value is concerned. You got to keep the miles low. You got to keep it nice. A lot of people buy those cars that have a tremendous value, like Porsches and, I don't know. Well, I started to say Mercedes and BMW, but they depreciate just as fast as everything else does now. They didn't used to, but they do now. But just for example, a Porsche 911, first thing somebody's going to do when they buy that thing is they're going to take it to a detail shop. They're going to have the paint corrected. They're going to put paint protection film on it, and then they're going to put ceramic coating on top of that. Well, what's that cost? Well, anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000. It's crazy what they'll pay to do that. But they know that if they decide to get rid of that car in 2 years and they post it on Bring a Trailer or some other auction site, or they sell it trade it into a Porsche dealership, and it has had those things done to it, they'll get all that money back. Plus, the car will look a lot better. But the average consumer won't do that. They're not going to pay $5,000 to put paint protection film on a Kia Soul. But they can do other things. They can keep the car clean. Well, if you get a star in the windshield, they can fix it or get the windshield replaced under insurance. If it gets dents and dings on it from Walmart or wherever, then they get them fixed. They don't just live with it. It's not just transportation. It's an asset, just like your house. You need to protect it. You need to keep it looking good. You need to keep the interior clean. You need to keep it smelling good. I see these people driving around all the time, and they have those air purifiers or whatever hanging from their rear view mirror. It's all those scents and stuff. As soon as I get in a car like that, I start sneezing. But they use that to cover up the other smells that they haven't cleaned up in their car. They wonder why their car stinks. It's that McDonald's bag that's in the back seat, been there for 2 weeks. So anyway, buying it right, maintaining it right, then fixing it right. When do you abandon the new car dealer and start using aftermarket parts? When do you go to an independent shop, and what do you go to an independent shop for? You do not go to the tire store for a check engine light, folks. There's just certain things that should be left to the new car dealer that sells your vehicle. Now, if it gets really old, like that couple that had the same car for 13 years, yeah, if it's older like that and you need to have new shocks or need a new alternator, independent shop's fine. But I guarantee if it has a really difficult electrical problem, that independent shop is going to send you to the dealer or tell you to take it to the junkyard and go buy something else. So fixing it right, going to the dealer when you need to go to the dealer, maintaining service records. Every time you turn a wrench on that car, it should be written into a book. Those books can be worth several $1,000s. I started to say thousands and thousands, but really several $1,000s of value can be added to a car if there is a repair record in the car. Now, I'm not just talking about a bunch of repair orders crammed into the glove box or into some file in your house. I'm talking about a book where you log. It's like a logbook where you put the date, the repair order number, what they replaced, and what the mileage was. If you hand that to somebody that's thinking about buying your car, they're going to look at that and they say, wow. You know what it gives them? Confidence. And confident buyers will pay more. Okay, I'll take my last break. I'll be back here in just a second. Well, I said confident buyers will pay more. Car dealerships are buyers, and you want them to be confident in your trade. I mean, we'll always step up to a car that's obviously been maintained. You know, if it's got relatively new tires on it, it's clean, it smells good, there's no dents and dings all over it, the windshield's not busted, you know, it doesn't have a check engine light on. All of those things make us feel good. And it makes us willing to stretch an extra $1,000 or so on somebody's trade-in, maybe even more than that. And then they pull out that maintenance book, and then all we're thinking about is, you know, this thing's going to be easy for us to sell. Let's just go ahead and stretch on this car. That's how we think. So that needs to be how you think. Maintain right. It's very important. And then the final thing is just driving right. You know, your driving habits determine how long your car's going to last, how long your tires are going to last. I took my 65 Mustang out and drove it over the weekend, this past weekend. And I noticed that it was really hard to steer, and I knew what it was. I didn't have enough air pressure in the tires. I got it to the house. I fired up my air compressor. I checked the tire pressures with my high-quality tire pressure gauge. Had 18 pounds of pressure, and tires are supposed to have 35 pounds. Why is that, Lenny? It's because it's been sitting on my showroom for probably 3 months. That's how much it can fall. And so your tires will last longer if they're inflated. Don't stress your vehicle out with bad driving habits. You know, taking off too fast, stopping too fast. All of this wears out brakes and other components in the engine. You know, how you start your car on cold mornings. How long do you let it warm up? You know, I recommend that you should never pull out any quicker than like 30 seconds. I mean, that's not much, but really I'd prefer you sit there for a minute and let the oil get to the top of the engine where all those delicate engine parts are operating right now with no oil on them, because it's all drained down into the oil pan. You just need to let your car sit there for just, let's call it a minute. I mean, my Porsche will sit there in my garage, and I don't move it until the idle drops. It basically tells me when, okay, Lenny, you can take me out now, because it goes from about 2,500 RPM or 2,000 RPMs down to about 700. But it'll idle up, and I know I'm not supposed to pull out until it goes down. That's a handy little reminder, isn't it? Well, I hope some of this helps you get focused on the importance of the asset that you own and that you take care of it the way you should. Feel free to text or call if you have any questions, 423-552-2020, and I'll see you on the next edition of My Car Guru.